Hey, it's Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Monday. It's October 5th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And today it was all uphill. We really kind of rallied. We started a rally on Friday, and you can see it was pretty strong Friday afternoon, and it just continued right on into today. And we went from 1883 to almost 1980, so almost 100 points in 2 trading days. So that's what I keep talking about when we get to whenever we hit these low points and people finally decide we're low enough, it really starts rallying big time. And so just be aware of that and be prepared for that because it could happen again. Um, I mean, you got to love these kind of moves. And somebody asked me Friday about this big move down. I've still got my some of my work from Friday morning on here. But why you get big moves down like this, and what happens generally in the overnight hours, there's a lot less volume. Generally by 6:30 or 7, I usually start trading about 7. Generally, you don't have a volume issue by that time of day, but it doesn't take a whole lot of, if somebody comes in prepared to sell, and what I'm guessing is that somebody had a sale order that says, hey, if prices reach this price level, we need to sell X amount of contracts, and so they start selling. So it's probably a big time seller, and once it starts moving, everybody else has to get in. And it doesn't, like I said, being that it's before the regular session, which 8:30 is down here, so the regular market, look what happened once the regular market opened. It found the bottom and it rallied. And so, for all you know, this could be a big seller that just tried to drive the market down just to get a better price before they take it higher. Um, but my guess is this is probably automated selling, that there were orders set. Hey, if we reach a certain price level, sell X amount of contracts until they're all gone. And, it dropped really quick. It kind of slowed down a little. The big move was all right in here, and then it kind of slowed down a little bit and still moving pretty quickly, but nothing like from here to here. There's 20 points there in a few minutes. So, but that's what causes something like that. There's just somebody's selling, and this is in the pre-market hours, so the volume's a little thinner. It probably doesn't take nearly as much to drive it down. And if you're following the rules, notice what happened here is that there's no entry right here. So if you entered here and you didn't exit when it broke below if you entered here, if you follow the rules, which there's no entry there anyway if you follow the rules, but let's say you're going to take a first entry there, your stop goes below right here. So the most you're going to lose is a couple of points. If you're following those rules, if you completely break the rules and you just watch this go and you don't exit, then yeah, you're in big trouble. But if you're following the rules, you're not entering in here anyway. You would have entered here maybe on this failed second entry short, but guess what? You would have been out of that with a scalp, and the only thing you would have had going were runners, and you would have exited them at break even, so you'd have still made money even after on this big sell-off. So that's a good example of why you got to follow the rules and why we have those rules in place. Because if you don't follow them, you could, and you just watch this fall hoping it's going to come back. Well, you can blow a lot of money in no time, no time at all. So we've had a little cold spell hit here over the weekend. When I say cold spell, you probably laugh, but for us, it's a cold spell. And got down in the 50s last few nights, and my throat's bothering me a little bit. So I don't know if it's the cool weather or what, but I'm struggling a little bit with my throat today. So I'm going to try to wrap this one. I'm going to try to get into the trades and wrap this one up. But really what we had was a spike in a channel. There's some shorter term ones. There's a spike here, and there's a shorter term channel. Here's the trend line, and here's the upper one. And then there's the bigger two-tiered channel that's working higher. And then there's a spiking channel with the red one. I wasn't too sure about the red one early on, but it turned out that it's definitely in play, and it was, that's most of your play from 8:30 on is this red two-tier channel, but it's a spike up in a channel. So, and there's shorter term ones all within there. There's another shorter term channel working up through here. So even if you didn't see the bigger picture, as long as you followed the short term trend lines, you're okay. So anyway, let's back out, talk about the trades, and wrap this up because my throat is giving me a little bit of trouble here. So this was the first trade I saw. It's right at the 7 o'clock hour. Just at, well, I shouldn't say right at. It's after. It's into the 7 o'clock hour. But notice we're working down, and there's an uptrend, so we're not looking for anything but a long. Notice how it comes down, it pushes forward, it comes down, and then it pushes up and turns up. There's a hidden second entry long there. It's a little bit aggressive, but it does bounce. It is the first pullback to the EMA since 3 o'clock in the morning. So we're probably going to get a bounce that'll probably go back at least to this high. So notice it broke lower first and went up. So if you want to be aggressive, there's a second entry, and you can take that there, and it would have worked. That would have been all you got out of it was a scalp. Then it pulls back, and it gives you a true second entry here, which I don't like it because this is not a really good signal bar. Look how everything's kind of stacked up, a couple of dojis in there. If you took this, it would have ended up working. I guess I could, it is a second entry. I guess I could mark it green. I wouldn't even take it green, to be honest with you. I think you're better off to wait and see if you get the failed second entry short, which comes right here. And notice it actually broke here. It broke. This is your bar here. It broke. This bar broke below this bar and turned and went out the top, all in the same bar. But I'll be honest with you, because of the way it's stacked up, and this is looking like a range. This is off the low. What I would do is I would put me a limit order in here and try to sneak in far enough back to where there's enough room to scalp out before you get to here, just in case. And you probably would have been out, but if not, it pulls back again, and then it gives you a double test of that low and gives you another big reversal bar. And when, the more times this thing fails to go lower, it's probably going higher. And we did trade up into this trading range. So I like getting in here, and if you hadn't scalped out yet from one of these others, I like adding on right here. And so if you got into these, you could have had a nice stack of trades stacked up here. And that one trade, once it took off, if you kept your runners, you might have made some pretty good money. It worked out pretty nicely. And notice that there's a shorter term trend line drawn off those first couple of swings, and see it working higher, and it fits real nice on the top. You got an overshoot here before you broke it here, and then it bounces. So, but let's talk about this trade. This one is definitely green. This is a breakout pullback, but notice what happens. It tries to pull back once. There's no setup there. It tries to pull back again. So there's really a failed second entry short there, but you got to go long at the very high of the day, and I never recommend that. And so just wait and see what happens. Then it pulls back again, and it's very similar down here. The more times it pulls back, the more likely it's going higher. And if you see this trend line across here, it's a bounce right off that. It's a midline is what it is. Your trend line's here, and your upper trend channel line is here. So this is a midline on the trend channel. And that's a nice little bearish bar. It's small. It's still close to those highs, though, and there's a lot of overlap there. But it kind of looks similar to down here. It's kind of a repeat pattern. And so then it pulls back and gives you a breakout pullback long here as well. You almost could really mark that one green, but again, you've got to go long at the high of the day, and it's just never a good idea. And so I'll give it a green, but I don't like it. You know what? I'm not even going to mark that one green. I just don't like it because, look, here's your second entry. It would have worked, but it's so close to that high, and look, it goes one tick higher and turns down. Here's another one, kind of the same thing. It keeps trying to go lower, and it goes one tick higher. That's why you can't do that, because you're going to end up getting burned. This one, again, if you got in with a limit order and gave yourself enough room, which it came back far enough to get in this thing way down here. Notice how it pulled back and then it shot up. So if you followed that rule, you would have still been okay here. Even here, if you followed that rule, you would have still been okay. So, but, I guess if you look at it like that, if you use a limit order and you get in back here, I guess I'm okay with it being green under that circumstance and that circumstance only. So that's the only way you could do that. And I'll leave it green based on that. But then you get the overshoot here, you come back, you get a bounce there. There's no break of that trend line yet coming down. But when it tries to turn down and bounces right off the line, right off that midline again and turns up, I like going long there because you got enough room and you're probably going to shoot up to a new high, at least back up to this upper trend channel line if it's indeed valid. And you can tell by the time it bounces off at the third time it is. But they were still catching people long in here. And that's why I say that you got to be real careful. Notice in this case you had a lot of room up to this line and this line. But right here, you're right at it, and you better just stay away from it. And there's no setup on the first entry, but on that second entry, you're so close to that high. It's right into this trend channel line. So if it breaks higher and pulls back enough to get you out before you get back to this line, then I'm okay with it. It came back here and would have filled you, but notice what happened. It never went higher again. So you had to get filled on this bar. And if you could, under that circumstance, I'm willing to give it a green. But past that, no, because now you've tried to push higher multiple times. You should be able to find that line now. And once you bounced off of it again, I definitely wouldn't try to get back in because we're way overdue to come back to the other side. And notice we got a little channel working down. You get a break here. That's why you can't go long because you're probably going to try to test the low again. It does. And where does it bounce? Right off the line. I like that setup. That's a nice, easy one. And there's actually a failed second entry short right here. So there's another one there. For some reason, I didn't get that one circled. But that's another great setup there. And notice the new low. Pull back first entry. Pull back second entry. It fails, goes higher. Nice setup there. We make a new high, we pull back, there's a first entry, we pull back, there's a second entry, but notice you got a trend line working here, and that's the first break. So you're probably going to get a retest, and notice how we turned down right there off of that midline. So it shows you that the midline's still acting as resistance, and you got to go long right into it. So just wait and see what happens. And it turns down, and you never get the failed second entry short, it just goes lower. Generally, I wouldn't be too eager to take a short in here, but there was a chance that maybe this, see how flat this is right across here? This was starting to look like a range. So there's a chance that maybe there's a range here. And really, I should probably make this one green. It's so close, but it's a failed second entry short, and it's reversal, and you're probably headed back to here. So for that reason, I liked it. But you got to be real careful going short in an uptrend like this. But notice what happens. You did get your break and you get a new low, and then it makes a little trap here. You can't go long on that bar, so you got to wait, and it turns back down, and then it gives you a nice bearish bar. Just go long right there. And then it gives you a failed second entry short right here. It's just a repeat pattern of what we had over here. New low, first entry, pull back, second entry, it fails, it goes higher. And then you can treat this like a failed second entry short too. Notice we pushed back through the midline, pull back. That's like a little breakout pullback long. But because that's a double bottom, you can count this as a new low. So there's a first entry, second entry. You know, you would expect this to go a little further, but when it bounces right off the EMA, I like that one. Then it pulls back and gives you a first entry right off the EMA. You don't want to take that one. Would have worked, but you can't take that. Then it comes back and it gives you another first entry right here that confirms this little trend line working up through here. But you can't go long on that first entry. I think you need a better entry. So it tries to go lower and then turns up and gives you this big bullish bar. When it breaks above that, I'm okay with you coming back here and putting a limit order in where you should have originally entered and seeing if it'd fill you, and it would have, and then it takes off. So even though we use this to trigger our trade, this was really the signal bar, so your stop has to go down here. So you got to get in far enough back, or you got to risk a little more. And this is so close to that eye, I don't think you want to risk that. So you got to get in down here again. So that's why that one's green. Turns out to be a pretty good trade. Then look, pull back first entry, pull back second entry. So you get a second entry long right there. Just take that one. And then right here, notice there's a new swing low. Pull back first entry. You pull back. There's a second entry short. You're not looking for shorts, but this long here, you got to go long right into the high of the day again. And you've seen what happens to you sometimes when you do that. So what you got to do is when it breaks higher, use a limit order and come back a tick or two. And if you come back too far, you'd have missed this one. But you got to come back a tick or two. And notice there's a second entry long right there, but it's 1 or 2 ticks off the high of the day. So again, I think you got to skip that one. You had to enter it here, really. And if you did, it would have worked. And it turns out to be a pretty nice trade. But you can't risk that. You can't let what happened over here happen to you. So you're better off using, a limit order and trying to sneak into this one with a better entry, or just skipping it altogether. And that got you into the. There weren't really any more entries because this just continued to move higher into the 2 o'clock hour. There's actually a second entry long right here. Time did that one occur? You'll see that's after the 2 o'clock hour. And if you'd have taken that one, you most likely would have got burned. Because let's pull back first entry, pull back. Actually, that's not a second entry. I take that back because there's a high there, and that's a newer high. So no, the second entry's down here, and it would have worked. So my bad there. Skip that idea. But anyway, that got you into the 2 o'clock hour, and it's too late. It was this one that I was talking about originally. There's a second entry there, but it's right off the midline. I mean, right off the EMA, and we're back under here, and see how it's acting as resistance. You want to see what happens before you try to go long. Right there. If you did take that one, you would have gotten stopped out by a single tick before it went higher again. But here's the clue here. This overshoot, generally that's going to lead to a move to the other side before you make a new high. Not always, but that's generally what will happen. And with that overshoot, it usually leads to a break, and there's your break, a new high. And guess what? That was the high of the day, and then we've been trending down ever since then. We kind of went flat there. And that's another reason, although you might have had this line, right there at the time, and it would have looked like a bounce right off of it, but it would have been a first entry counting a new move. And that's another thing too. I don't have all this on there because I wasn't really paying much attention this late. But there's a trend coming down. That's your first break. There's another one going up there as well. But you really don't know that it's, you could start to think, hey, there's a range here, and watch, see what happens here. But anyway, that's what I saw for the day. Not much else I can say about it, but price action looked pretty good. But I'm going to wrap it up for the day. This is Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.